Greetings and salutations. I would like to preface by saying I'm not a sports fanatic, but I am wearing a sports sweatshirt and I did buy it because it's from the year I was born. So it's kind of vintage. Does that mean I'm vintage? So hello, welcome to the booktube newbie tag. Fun fact, I actually already filmed this video before I started working on another video that I'm working on, and I literally forgot my personality that day, I guess, and it was so boring. Okay, so let's just jump right into the questions. Question 1, why did you start this channel? I started this channel because I have always loved making videos, and a couple years ago I was working a job where I was making videos every week for the place I was working for, and it just it sparked joy, and I want like a creative outlet that will spark joy. And honestly, video making is the one. Video making and I go way back. We have like a really long-term relationship, but I picked booktube specifically because I have a book buying problem. Cannot read that fast, but I have a book buying problem. But also I feel like I have so many ideas of ways to incorporate other things into the bookish world and like creatively make bookish content. Which leads us to the second question, which is what are some fun and unique things you can bring to YouTube? First of all, I've never been on booktube before, so that's unique. That's totally a lie. I tried to be a booktuber once and I made like this Hamilton book tag. Today I'm going to be doing the Hamilton book tag. I am so obsessed with Hamilton. Yeah, they flopped. One thing I can definitely bring is nostalgia. That is one thing I'm for sure bringing. I am bringing nostalgia to booktube. My own personal nostalgia, perhaps, but things that many can relate. I also just have like jack of all trade, I like to do other forms of creativity that could be incorporated somehow into my content. So question 3, what are you most excited for about this new channel? Editing the videos, which is like, who says that? Me. I went to school for 2 years for film editing and I missed making short form content. Yeah, needless to say, I changed my major, but that's besides the point. But yes, I'm so excited to just edit the videos, have fun with editing, and add some spice to bookish content. I'm really hyping myself up in this video, but you know what? Confidence, baby. I'm also just excited, some of the ideas I have are gonna have me reading books that I have been meaning to read and that I've been wanting to read, and things that I would never have picked out for myself, but reading those books in a video format will encourage me to actually follow through. So I'm very excited. Number 4, why do you love reading? I'm gonna have to say this one goes out to my elementary school. Actually, it probably goes further back to that. I used to have a tub of books under my bed as a child. My mom every night would let me pick, and she would read to me a picture book. Then in elementary school, I was BFFs with my librarian at the school I went to, and she just always wanted to talk about the books we were reading. It was there that I read Coraline. Coraline is one of my oldest favorites. I read this before the movie even came out, and my librarian told me when I finished it, she said, guess what, they're gonna make it into a movie. And I was so excited, and my love of reading dates back to then. I also really liked the author Margaret Peterson Haddix. If anyone's familiar, Double Identity, this was my favorite book in 5th grade. I just recently bought it to reread and I'm very excited. but like truly the element of escapism that comes with reading. And like with reading, I feel like you can reread a book you read at a certain phase in your life and like almost revitalize the way you felt when you read it, which okay, so in that answer, I basically answered question 5 as well, which is what book or series got you into reading. And like, I'm probably gonna have to say Coraline or Double Identity, but really I was just reading whatever was like in my elementary school library, in my elementary school classrooms. There was like Junie B. Jones, there were all sorts of other books. I literally have a Goodreads folder dedicated to like childhood books that I want to reread that I remember being read to me. My 2nd grade teacher always read to us from a chapter book, and like, so fun. Question 6, what questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? Well, first of all, I would like to say my favorite booktuber is Books and Lala, because she was like the first person I found that was reading different content than the people I originally started watching. I started watching booktube in like 2014, and I just knew about all the hyped books basically, which is not a bad thing, but watching Books and Lala's content made me want to expand my reading taste. I don't have any specific questions, but I just heart her content. What challenges do you think starting a booktube channel will be the hardest to overcome? For sure, reading slumps, and for sure the slow pace that I read, because I cannot skim. That's just not for me. If I'm not understanding every single word of the book, I am not actively reading it, which is not to say that skimming books is not reading. I think there are other ways to read, but for me, I have to be like actively engaged in a story, which definitely causes me to go through little phases of like not wanting to read, which could be problematic if you want to make a video about a book that is perhaps not interesting to you, or like turning out to be not as you expected it to be. Question 8 is, when did you start reading? And I also kind of answered that. As a child. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sing. For a long time, but I will say, post-dystopian era of books being popular, like Divergent, Hunger Games, like all that, I had like a year. Actually, the year was 2014. That was when I started tracking when I was reading, and I was like non-stop reading. I was in high school at that time, and I carried a book everywhere. I read waiting for class to end, waiting for class to start, my entire study hall period, like anytime I could get a chance, I would read. And I could be reading 2 books at once, and I would literally tune out the world and just read. So I've been reading for a while, but I will say that I did get into a really bad slump around the time that I went to college. Like the first 2 years of college, I think I read 3 books total, which is so sad because it's not like I didn't want to read, but it was harder. Now that I am actively someone who stays home all the time, I read more. Question number 10 is, what kind of books do you like to read? Fun fact, in my last semester of college, which was the last semester, somebody asked me what my favorite genre of book was, and I said thriller. And then they said, what books? And I said, I don't think I've ever read a thriller. I convinced myself that thriller is a genre I like, yet could not name a single one. Like, I've definitely read some mystery. I ended up telling the person that I really liked Agatha Christie, which is true. But yeah, it's hard to say what kind of books I like to read. I've definitely learned recently I like a found family aspect of a book. I definitely like a spooky vibe. I'm kind of trying to want to get into more like classics. I want to read more of my childhood favorites. Let me take a gander at my shelf. I honestly feel like I read anything. Probably the one genre I read the least of is like romance. I do read a lot of YA. I'm kind of stepping out of that, trying more like adult. I love a book that's like cheesy. A book that's a little like the Pretty Little Liars books. I like those maybe a little too much. Yeah, I would say that is a question that I don't have a concrete answer, and that answer probably will change and evolve by tomorrow. The last question is, what does your book collection look like? And well, why don't you take a gander behind me? Like, take a peek. We got a little bit of everything. We've got some of the Heroes of Olympus, which I haven't read yet. Read/reread Percy Jackson last year. It was such a vibe. My bookshelf has like an interesting juxtaposition, if you will, of like things that I loved in high school, like 2014 popular reads, and then whatever the heck I'm interested in now, which is kind of like, if you look right here, that's a Lord John Grey book, like from Outlander. I haven't finished reading Outlander. I've been reading it for a couple months now, but was addicted to the show during COVID quarantine, so I've got quite an assortment. But yes, I am incredibly excited to be doing this. I'm already actively working on a video. It's gonna be me reading the Click books so that you don't have to. And I've already read the first one and I'm reading the second one right now. I want to read all of them, but it's gonna have to separate into like several parts for all of them because I have so much to say about them. That was a series I read when I was younger but never finished, and it's a questionable favorite. Yes, I literally have a long list of video ideas and I'm very excited to be here and to be doing this. So if you got this far, I want you to comment below your favorite childhood book, or like the one with the most nostalgia surrounding it, because I talked a lot about my nostalgic reads, and then like your current, I was gonna say favorite book, but I can't even say what my current favorite book is, so your current read, and we'll see the interesting juxtaposition. Why am I like me using juxtaposition twice in this video? What the heck? We'll see what the interesting combination is in the comments. If you made it this far, thank you. And good night, or good evening, or good morning. Bye.